It's 3 out. All right, here we go. 3, 2. Hey, everyone. Welcome to what I'm pretty sure is episode 347 of This Is Whole Life. I didn't do my normal notes routine, and it's already rearing its ugly head because I don't realize how much I depend on those.
Are we all in trouble?
No. No, I think we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to do today. Well, I said that 2 weeks ago too, and we know how that turned out.
As a collective we.
Yeah. In my defense, I was fighting virtual reality headsets into the wee hours of the morning, and it was that's usually when I'm doing prep time usually. So anyway, we had some priorities to clean up this week, but we're going to get it done. No problem. And there's a few of you that were in the lobby this week that already kind of know, or you think you know, and you were trying to guess this past Saturday on what this piece of paper that, for those of you that can't see it, but you can hear it, in my hand, I hold, get it unfurled here, the recipe for sausage, apple, and cheddar bread pudding. Now, this is the one I asked for. I said, whoever made this dish for, that was what, candlelight communion on Christmas Eve.
Oh, yeah.
So, man, I mean, this is pretty good. I got this back in about a month. So I feel like
this is the breakfast?
Yes, a brunch.
The breakfast brunch.
And so there was a ton of really good dishes. And I asked for this, and the person, Pam Nolen. Thank you, Pam.
Oh, nice, Pam.
So Pam is not only a wonderful leader of our Stevens Ministries ministry, but she's a heck of a brunch cook is all I'm telling you.
There you go.
So I have the recipe here in my hot little hands, preheat oven to 350. You can get started now. And then if you want to just pause, you can swipe up in the show notes and you will find those in there for you today. And someone made the suggestion, maybe we need one for our vegan and vegetarian counterparts. So if you had
so
one,
that was real sausage.
Yeah, she made turkey sausage. She put a little flag in there just to make sure everybody knew. And if you didn't know, now you know why and what you've been missing. Yeah, in case you missed the flag. No, but if you have a recipe that you brought to brunch and you'd like to submit those, we'll throw a couple more and maybe a nice vegan one so we have all bases covered. Vegetarian, yeah, because Ken would like one too.
Yeah.
But with maybe, crumbles instead of the sausage?
And maybe...
Oh, I don't know about the crumbles.
What do you prefer?
I like the Worthington.
Do you?
Yeah.
No, that's, again, it's got eggs, so you're talking vegetarian. So if you want to do vegan, it goes another step.
Yeah,
right?
So we could do a veggie and that. So just go ahead. Send it to
I'm vegetarian, not vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send it to podcast@wholelife.church, and I'll make that happen.
That was a detour there, I guess.
Yeah, you didn't see that one coming. And
I didn't.
You never know when you ask for something what you're going to get back. So I was pretty excited to get that back, and I'm a happy guy because I think brunch this weekend is going to be pretty good because I'm cooking. So at the end of last week, I accused Ken prematurely of probably breaking out the velvet sledgehammer on us because we were going to talk, we went from the invitation, and then we went to the called, and then we come down to the response, which immediately made me feel like, well, not that I shouldn't say it about Ken, but Jesus says his yoke is easy and light, and we always screw it up and make it heavy. So I thought, well, maybe Ken's going to screw this up and make it heavy. But I'm happy.
That's this coming week.
But I'm happy to report that it really wasn't in any way, and it was far more simple than I had ever imagined. And I know that you always know when you're in a good message when you look around the room and people are just kind of quiet and they're paying attention. They're looking ahead. You see the heads nod when you kind of feel like it's a group time to do the head nod and the agreement, and you catch an amen. And if you sit by a Tara, well, you don't have to sit by a Tara to get an Atara amen. You can sit anywhere in the sanctuary because I love to hear Atara's feedback.
Shout out to Atara.
Yeah, we love you, Atara.
But I really felt like this week was one of those where you sit and you take it in, and you just threw one right across the plate. Nice, easy fastball. No curveballs. No.
It's kind of straightforward, huh?
Just kind of straightforward and easy to hit and easy to digest. And the more you think on it, the better it seems.
Oh, I like that.
I liked it at first service. Second service, I was a little bit busy. I didn't catch second, and I haven't edited it yet, so I haven't gone to see that. But it just the longer I've sat on it, the more I've liked it. And when you have guests in town, and they're like, "That was an amazing message," and so the people that were surrounding you also had that. I just came away with, well, this is easy. And why do we make it so difficult? Not things that we don't already know, but it's a good reminder that we're the ones that make this difficult far too often. And it's usually not so much what's being asked, but what I guess our interpretation. And then we get some weird idea of all the things we need to do to take that simple concept and make it as complicated as possible. So I was completely not where I thought we were going. But the question I had to start with, when I liked how you brought in the invitation, the call, and hey, if it's something cool, right? We all want to tell our friends about the latest cool, if we're into gadgets, we're into tech, we're into books, whatever it is, movies, could be anything. We always want to share those things. And they did, but I feel like we take a lot longer to do it. Like, how often do you just go somewhere or the latest thing and you're like, I got to tell everybody, and you do it? Doesn't it usually take a little bit longer? I just felt like the way, the feeling I was getting is you're talking about, John the Baptist introduces Andrew introduces his brother, Phillip introduces Nathaniel, all these things. And it's happening in this quick time period. What was it about Jesus? Was it just his physical presence? Was it that they knew him maybe longer before this? But even if they did, it just seems like there's a lot of persuasion happening in the very moment and very soon afterwards, because they don't even give up when there's pushback. No. You have to do this. You have to do this. What was it about Jesus that made it so good right there? And is that same thing still available for people to feel, even though you're not going to have the same in-person experience?
Like, if you could meet anybody out there, Randy, who would you want to meet?
Oh, right now? If I could meet anybody today and just sit down and have like coffee and lunch, it'd be David Gilmour. He's one of my favorite guitar players, Pink Floyd, and just one of my all-time heroes, and seemingly overall good guy, and just someone that I think would be super interesting to just sit down and hear some of the stories.
So if I met David, and like suddenly I knew him, how long do you think it would take me to come tell you that you could that he'd like to have lunch with you?
If you knew I wanted to. But he's a celebrity. But was Jesus a...
Well, you're talking about, the people, the person, the Messiah that the Jewish people have been waiting for several thousands of years. So, and they were pretty excited about that idea. So if you find the person that you believe to be the Messiah, and a friend who's been waiting for the Messiah, you'd probably want to share that pretty quickly with that person. Be like, hey, I found the Messiah. I know you've been looking too. So, yeah.
But I mean, what convinced him that he was the Messiah that fast?
The fun thing, we didn't talk about this, but each one had a different reason for being convinced. Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like, not everybody obviously got it right.
The first two disciples were convinced because John the Baptist, who they believed to be a prophet, identified Jesus as the Messiah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then Andrew, who is one of those two disciples, went and found his brother, Peter. And Peter seems to be convinced because his brother was convinced. And so that seems to be part of it. But then when then we go to Philip, and then we get to Nathaniel. Nathaniel's not convinced until he actually meets Jesus. And Jesus says, I saw you before you came here. You're under the fig tree. And Nathaniel's like, okay, that's it. It settles it,
Yeah.
And so, for each one, I think there was a different way. And I think it kind of is a neat little maybe metaphor that that Jesus gives us all the evidence that we need for us. And the evidence that Melanie needs is different than the evidence Jeff needs is different than the evidence Ken needs, and we all have our own way of kind of responding to that call of Jesus in our life. And some people, by the way, don't always respond positively, and there's stories in the Gospels of that too.
So the other part that I thought that was really interesting was Peter introducing Phillip to Jesus, a little sidebar that you had, which that's like always my favorite part, is to find something that, maybe isn't exactly the way you thought it was, or could be open to interpretation. So I was just going to open it up to Melanie and Jeff. Was this something you already had probably knew about as well? And any thoughts?
Actually, no. I've read a lot of D.A. Carson, and that's the first time I'd heard that part.
Yes.
But yes, good job, Ken. I mean, I thought it was a really interesting possibility, because there is some ambiguity in there. But I also think, though, that the story holds either way. Because either way, somebody met Jesus and immediately introduced Jesus to someone else. So even if it was Jesus who introduced himself to Philip, Philip still went straight away and found Nathanael. So I think either way,
yes, but my theory is more fun.
Your theory is pretty cool,
and it works better.
I did think that it worked better. And it was fun for sure.
And it does fit that whole story, which I think was actually being laid out. I think the one thing that as I was listening to the sermon myself, I thought, to be in those moments where, you were looking for the Messiah. You had heard stories of generational stories that you'd probably heard from ancestors that have passed these down, and to finally come in contact with somebody like John the Baptist and hear John the Baptist say, "Behold, the Lamb of God," and then you're a disciple. I struggled with the idea of who stayed with John after that. Who was going to stop and go, "Wait a minute, what happened? Did we just see the guy we're supposed to follow now?" Or because I do think that was a difficult thing for somebody to grapple with, to say, "Whoa, this is not the best one," because that's how we usually go. "Oh, Jesus is better rabbi than so and so, or he's a better prophet." He was the only choice. He was the Messiah, and I think that played out really well for these people that started to come into, like Nathanael, especially as he goes, "Okay, we've found him."
Yeah.
To be able to say that, and that's a remarkable time period.
Yeah, I never really thought about it, but it's kind of like, well, John, you've now turned into, I don't know, pick your whatever star of 15 years ago, and all of a sudden you're not the flavor of the day anymore. Does John still go and do we don't hear as much, right? But then you have Jesus, and it's like, well, no offense, Melanie. I really like you. We have fun to talk to you.
Thanks,
but
Randy.
Yeah, but if Jesus shows up, I'm not sticking around I'll invite you to go. I'll say come and see, but
But think of it this way, Randy. If my whole existence, if everything I know about myself is my purpose in life is to prepare the way for someone else, then when that someone else comes along, I have fulfilled what I have been called to do and what I've been taught since birth that I was here to do. So I don't know if it would be like, "Hey, where's everybody going?" It might have been more like a celebration, like, yes, I did what I was called to do.
Maybe I can go get a steak.
And with his and with as ornery as those disciples were,
maybe
John might have been like, you got to wonder whether did John give Jesus the best of his disciples? Because
John's just headed back to
You
his
need to make
locusts
this
and honey.
decision quicker.
He's done.
there's some employees you're happy for. You're good for you. No, but I'm sure John gave him the cream of the crop there.
It's a great visual of him just like, man, I am so done with this itchy camel hair stuff. I think I'm going to go get an Armani and just, go get an espresso somewhere.
He looked at him and said, which ones of you are going to be the prison ministers of my group? 'Cause I'm going to need you pretty soon.
That's unfortunate. That is that John turned it, did not go Armani. He went into prison shortly thereafter.
Mm-hmm. And he did go through a period of sort of questioning, like, wait a minute, is this the right thing? Because his life didn't necessarily turn out the way that he expected it would. So he had some questions and needed some answers also. So
that's tough to think about, though, when you think someone like John the Baptist, who had known all along what his job was, and then to be that wrapped up in work, I guess. I mean, it's the highest calling you could ever have, but then to be like, well, now what do I do? And where do I go from here? Never really thought about that.
Yeah, you think about that with the you hear from professional athletes all the time. The hardest thing for them is when they retire, because it's like, now what? This has been my purpose my whole life.
And what's going to compare it to?
Yeah.
And with John, not a professional athlete, but certainly that was his purpose.
But I think that even that plays out in the right way, because here you have John was he was not divine. And I think as humans, that's the struggle that all of us deal with is, who am I? Am I on the right path? Jesus, I think, was through that wilderness experience, maybe that was the point where he realized who he was, what he was about, and what he needed to do. And I think to meet somebody that has that defined as, I think because of his divinity, he was able to capture the hearts and minds of these people in his day. This guy doesn't speak like other people, other prophets or other this. And so I think that's why people like the centurion and other people who, were not part of even the Jewish race understood this man was different. This person was different in Jesus Christ. And I think that came clear with people who started to realize this. I'm following the Messiah. That's really pretty important to this story. So I think it's a juxtaposed next to John, who did struggle a little bit with that, whereas Jesus, I don't think, struggled with his identity after.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of struck me was after Nathanael's like, Nazareth, nothing good comes from Nazareth. But it was almost the opposite for me, where I think sometimes we go, Christianity. Yeah, what's good about Christianity? We know all the bad things that Christianity has done over time, and they claim there's good things, but I think that 501c3, isn't that just a tax loophole? That's all churches are really there for. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to the George Carlin days, he used to do a routine about all the bad things that churches did, but for a God that could do anything. And, why do we need all these things from people when God can do it all? And there's, a narrative about Christianity that's less than stellar sometimes, and some of it's earned. But that's almost like the Nazareth, where you can make it easy, but you can also make it difficult when you're like, I don't really want to talk to anybody about this. I like my church, but what if they hear me and then they go to some other church I don't know very well, and they don't get the same kind of reception that I'm describing at my church and why I go to church, and they're like, see, I knew it was a bunch of garbage. So to me, it's almost like the Nazareth turns, instead of nothing good comes from that, nothing good could come from Christianity kind of thing, like, I'll keep it to myself.
Yeah, and I hear you, because the word Christian has gotten such a, well, let me put it this way, it has taken on so much baggage, especially with people who claim that they are the representatives of Christianity. You hear them on the news, you see them on social media, and you see all these different people who are ungenerous and unloving and unkind and hypocritical, and really in a lot of ways the opposite of who we see Jesus to be. And you really don't want to I mean, it's like you don't want to identify with that. Like, okay, can we call ourselves something else? Let's go back to followers of the way or something like that. But I mean, I think that we've got to push back. We have to push back on somebody else's definition of what this is supposed to be and who we're supposed to be.
Okay. I have no problem with defending
Nazareth.
Defending Nazareth.
Randy's, you had me at pushback.
Well, only from the fact that I've been to a lot of churches, different places, and I don't think I've met a lot of people that are specifically trying to be difficult or specifically trying to be less than loving. But there's a certain rut that people get into that's difficult to pry them out of. And until you're in a church where you see and you are affected by grace on a regular basis, where these people know, they know who I am. They know that there's lots of blemishes. There's lots of spots that need, a little extra coat of wax on a regular basis. And yet they still extend you grace with a smile and with a genuine love of you, your family, and that they truly want to see you succeed, not just in life, but they want to see you succeed in Jesus, which is a hard thing. It's never easy and it's hard. So it's always the bridging of those two. So I don't mind ever saying like, yeah, I go to Whole Life Church because this is what I have found there. This is what I have found. And, what are the holes? Where's the skeletons in the closet? And, where are all these things? And I could name a couple things that just personally for myself that I wish we were better at. But that doesn't mean that everybody isn't trying really hard to get to that place, to consistently to see problems, to see problem areas and go, man, we could definitely do better at that.
I'm not saying we don't have skeletons. I think we're trying to avoid having closets.
Oh, there you go. Maybe a museum where we put up the skeletons.
I like that. That should be a bumper sticker.
I like that.
I do.
No, that is awesome.
That's. I mean, what a great way of saying that. It's not that we don't have skeletons. We just don't have closets to hide them in. Because everybody's got skeletons in their life. Absolutely. Everybody's got stuff. And I think that one of the more terrifying things, is when you feel like you have to fake it in order to be loved and accepted, and you live in fear that somebody's going to find out the truth about what you are, who you are, where you've been, what you've done. Those are scary things to have that kind of fear for. And so I love that, Melanie. I love that. We all have skeletons, but what we're trying to do at this church is take away the closets.
Jeff's been here a long time. He knows. Do we have closets, Jeff?
Not enough sometimes, it seems like. No, actually take that away because we're constantly looking for storage here, but that's
okay. We've lost the metaphor.
But the metaphor is true. We do, and that's unfortunate. I think I love your comment, Melanie. I think one of the things that people resonate with is the idea of is church really? Come on, is it really the best choice these days for following Jesus? And I still want to maintain that it was, just because you have to look back at the disciples.
Yeah.
Because we can go to Jesus and we can say, Jesus, are these really the best guys you could have picked? And and that's sort of the same comment. It's like they all had closets. Or they all had skeletons. I think Jesus was pretty clear that those closets were not going to hold him out of them, because he was pretty good at seeing into their lives, which not pretty good. He was very good, until finally I think all of those disciples were able to be real as the movement carried forward. But I don't like the idea of creating a church that has a lot of closets. I don't like that idea. So maybe that's our next vision statement.
A church without closets.
Church without closets. No
We got rid of the walls.
No
And the
closets.
Now the closets.
I like that. That's good. It's also a line that I think is tricky because there's a definite possibility and a definite line you can cross for oversharing where, we have to say every last bad thing or thing we wish we hadn't done that may not be shed such great light on us even as a time in the past. But it also feels like when we're at least able to say, yeah, I've struggled with that. You don't have to give all the details, or that, I understand that I was at that place in my life sometimes, and sometimes that's enough for people to realize that, wow, this person is engaged with their church. They've, maybe they're up front, maybe they're behind the scenes, whatever it is. And that person knows you to be a broken person. And yet when they go to church and they see other people hugging you, your friends, and you feel it when there's an opportunity to love on people at church. And when it's done on a regular basis, it feels good. There's not a lot of places in our world anymore that replicate that on an intimate basis like we do here.
Well, and I think it's fascinating because there are a lot of people who identify as Jesus followers who are so holy they can't hang out with anybody who has any kind of issue in their lives because they cannot be tainted. And my thing is, are you sure you were a Jesus follower? Because Jesus hung out with everybody and was not concerned about being tainted because the flow was going the other direction, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jesus didn't worry about being defiled when he touched dead bodies. He just resurrected people, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a different, there's a separatist attitude of, ooh, I need to protect myself from the world. And then there's the, well, I guess I should speak for myself. There's what I see that is more like Jesus, which is arms open, outward faced, being with all kinds of people in every different circumstance.
Yeah.
Headed somewhere good.
I don't know why this keeps coming back, but just bringing back old memories where when you go to church and you may even be involved even to a small degree, but if the arms aren't open and they're not raised and the people that, they may see you and give you the smile, but you can tell when it's not there, or when it's the quick, he saw me, move your head to the other direction and keep moving on, or, oh, I've got to chase that person down the hall that's not really there. The hallway is the best one. Oh, hey, how's it going? And then you get down there and there's nobody there and the door didn't just close, trying to avoid people sometimes for that very reason. And yet when sometimes it's just, I always tell people really what brought me back to Jesus was my wife, who never missed an opportunity to hug me. Before we were going out, she was the only single person at church that I could see. Like, she would go in, she carried her Bible with her, she'd go sit down by herself, pay attention the whole time. Like, who comes to church by themselves on purpose? Like, why are they doing this? I'm here to run the AV system, but I don't choose to be here. And it even knowing what I knew growing up Christian, it enticed me because it was different than Christianity. It was different than Christianity. She was a Jesus follower. Mm-hmm. And when she gave me a hug, it was like, wow, somebody here really cares whether or not I make it back next week. And if you knew me at that time, you'd be wondering if I was going to make it back for next week. So really, sometimes the littlest things that we can do are so important for how people feel. I love that. And so I hope that if you haven't heard the message, please don't miss it, because this is the crux of everything Follow Me lands on this year. Ken gave us an invitation to just come and see, invite people that, you're already friends with, people that It's kind of a warm invitation instead of, maybe knocking on doors or, throwing pamphlets out the window down I-4 to get people to come to church.
Drive-by evangelism.
You're on fire today, Mrs. Bachman. You are on fire.
Well, you think about it, though. What's the most I don't know, I'm trying to use the right word, but I'm just going to use it. It's the most lazy form of evangelism is to throw a pamphlet at somebody, or it requires the least investment of your life. And that's not, again, I know that's going to sound like I'm anti-pamphlet or whatever, and there's a place for everything. I feel quite certain. I think there's times where I've felt inspired to leave a little something for somebody to read somewhere or whatever. But for me, what really bothers me is when we feel like that's like the investment God's asking from us. And that's just, to me, I just don't read that in the Bible. I see Jesus investing his life into people. I see him asking his followers to invest their lives into people, not simply until they decide not to follow. That there's a commitment to friendship that goes beyond whether you buy what I have to sell at the end of the day. And that also is another thing that will bother me, is that how many people will enter into a friendship with somebody, discover that they're not interested in coming to their church, and then they're no longer your friend. You know what? The funny thing is, I've had that happen to me from people from another religious viewpoint, where they started, I like the person, and then as soon as it became clear that I was pretty happy being a Seventh-day Adventist, there was no more contact. And I felt disappointed by that, because I was like, well, I liked you. I mean, I thought we were hanging out because we were friends, and that you were sharing something good in your life that mattered to you, and I appreciated that. But I didn't agree with it. I didn't think that meant we couldn't be friends anymore. Yeah. And I can only imagine how people would feel on my end of things if that's the way that I invest in people, is like, well, you know, if you're not going to see my worldview, or you're not, then all I was really in this for was to try to get you to do what I wanted you to do. And when you don't do it, then there's nothing left. And again, I just don't see that bearing out in Jesus' life. It seems like Jesus continues his relationships with people, you know, not for the sake of manipulation or getting them to do something, as much as that he just loves them and cares about them. And there's friendship in there. And so that's, you know, some people are like, well, then what's the point? Well, my point is, I want to share with everybody the good things I've got in my life. I want to share my faith with my friends because it means something to me. But I'm also not going to give up on my friendship just because they don't agree or don't accept it or whatever. We're still friends. We've still got that. And so I think it's really important to, you know, to not be transactional in our relationships with people because we think that's some sort of, like, that's Christ evangelism strategy or something like that.
I used to love what Andy used to talk about when in these situations, when he would say that, you know, when you break everything down, and how many, you know, denominations are there across Christianity alone? But he said, if you really break down most of it, he said, we're 2 to 3 sentences basically away from agreeing on like nearly everything. And he said, you know, there's no reason that those 2 or 3 things should be the reason that we can't get along or that we can't do things or be friends or whatever, because you know, we haven't even given the Holy Spirit a chance to finish the work being done. And guess what? Look in the mirror. Maybe that reflection, maybe that work is being done on us and it's not the other person. And I think we get so wrapped up in totality of, well, we know what's going to happen. We have prophecy. We have this and that. And I'm not denouncing any prophecy or anything, but, you know, there might be a lot of surprises when everything is said and done that we just didn't totally get just right. And why lose an opportunity to just be friends with someone, or to even find the things that they do? Some people think the Sabbath is really weird, but also when they're like, you take the whole day off, like, this is kind of weird. You're like, you purposefully spend time with your family. It's like, well, yeah, we're kind of crazy that way. We enjoy each other's company.
We're kind of less crazy that way.
Yeah. And,
it's,
you know,
like,
and so even if they're not going to become a Seventh-day Adventist, or they're not going to, quote unquote, keep the Sabbath, the idea of that, though, you know, they take portions. And I think if that makes their life better by helping them slow down a little bit, even however they choose to apply it, that's something we can learn, that we can give, and we can get something back in return. I think it's a win-win.
I think Jesus won by his directive of being there for all humankind, all mankind, all humans. He didn't win very many points when he brought in Matthew in his group. They didn't think that was a good fit. They probably bucked at it. And then he brought in Judas, and they all thought that was actually a pretty good fit. fit. I think Jesus was not about trying to create, which is a lot of what we do, this brand loyal, this is our brand, this is your brand. And then we kind of make, make divisive little things to go in between. Oh, you were just, I didn't realize you were trying to get me to come to your church. I thought we were just friends. But Jesus wasn't trying to, because there was a lot of different political stances that Jesus could have jumped on. And I think he was trying to get his disciples, who were all at a different spectrum of the political arena at that time. And he was trying to get them to see, no, we're all here for one particular purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm the Messiah, and I'm here to save man.
Yeah. That's
And I think that was hard for people to get. Right? They all kind of bought in the beginning. Oh, this is the Messiah. We're going to bring, Judah to its rightful place, and so on and so forth. So
yeah, I like it. As we start to wrap it up, we had just a few questions, and I think we didn't get a lot of questions this week, honestly, because I think most people were in awe of the worship that happened this week. There was, like, if you couldn't find something to latch onto and find Jesus in this week at worship, man, you must have been snoozing. There was steel drums, there was special music, there was liturgical
yes, there
dancing.
was one particular.
Well, there was one
piece
particular that was
that
really.
Was there anything that was really especially good in your opinion there, Randy?
I mean, if you miss Jacinia and Ellie doing Bring It to Jesus, then you just didn't worship this week. That's from a highly biased.
If you haven't seen it, you should definitely go watch it. Of course, right after you listen to Ken's sermon, because
listen to it before. Then you can listen to it after.
Yeah,
it's great.
But I was
Both
pretty
times.
amazed. I ran into Randy after the church service, and he still had buttons on his shirt. So I'm not sure how those didn't all pop off with
This
pride.
is that flexible material.
But Randy's daughter did a beautiful job with Jess. With that.
No, and it was and most of our comments this week was just people really enjoying the variety and enjoying the kids being a part of the service, reading the scripture and the dance and the special music and the steel drums and all those things. And the production team, Abel and Nathaniel, special shout out. They did an amazing job, and Melanie and everybody for putting. That stage was full of activity from the moment it was go until it was done with 2 extra songs. So a lot of the comments came that. We also had a question from Ben who asked, I truly love the idea of come and see, but I struggle with asking people to come and see, especially when I don't see myself living like Jesus. What can I do? I feel you, Ben.
Yeah. I would say just remember, Ben, you're not asking them to come see you.
Well, there you go.
And that's the other thing. I think Jesus is very capable of drawing people to himself in spite of us. You think about those 12 disciples, which were not the most classy of guys and had their issues. And yet, in spite of all of them, Jesus drew people to him and used what they were able to do. So don't worry about that perfection. Just worry about saying, come see Jesus and see what happens.
Yeesh. It's hard to separate ourselves though when you're constantly when you know your own blemishes and you're like, oh boy, if I can see him, everybody else has to know, right?
The point is, if all of us had to wait until we arrived, none of us would ever be able to say, "Come and see." So, I think it's a directionality. It's like, hey, come look past me, unless you're checking out what's currently happening in my life toward the good, but look past me and look at Jesus.
Yeah, let's look back on that and then make sure we're seeing the right direction. Sharon said, after our friend comes to see, what is the next step that works best? Would their curiosity and questions be gradually answered, or should we pour out a deluge of teaching? What's the next step? Or should we just say for now, tune in next time for what we do after.
I think have 4 more Saturdays of sermons.
Yeah.
So there may be some more information in there for you. It's a very good question though, and about what's next. So stay tuned.
Okay. Well, everyone, Anonymous at the end, I really like this comment. It said, it will be amazing to see and hear all the talents and instruments playing and singing when we rejoice as one in heaven, especially when it sounds so great here. And it really was a good reflection of, man, it really was I hate to get caught up in the feels all the time. Like, well, if I didn't really get the feels, I didn't worship. But at the same time, this was a week where you couldn't avoid the feels. And maybe it's just, again, because certain people were in the program. But but seriously, I really enjoyed every single part of it.
Worship service.
It was good. And we're
okay, good one coming up too.
Do we?
Oh man.
What are we? This is this is the invitation. No, not the invitation. I wrote that wrong. This is the response, part 2.
Yeah. And part 2, and
what's coming?
We're going to talk about what it means to follow Jesus down the road. So that's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then a really good friend of mine, Furman Fordham, works in the South Central Conference, discipleship guru, and just a good friend of mine. He's going to be coming and preaching on February 4 as we kick off Black History Month. And we also have a great worship concert that February 4 that evening. So I hope people, just put a little save the date on there that not only are you going to get to hear great music, there's going to be some really great food from different African traditions. So I think that'll be really enjoyable. I know I'm planning on being a part of that.
Excellent. So the worship concert, the information, if you swipe up in today's show notes, you will find the information all about what's happening. And if you're at church next week, there are flyers here. You can grab them. You can give them to your friends and family, or on social media this week, they'll also be posted with all that information, and you can just go and share those across your networks, and that will also help out. And from what I've seen, it's going to be a really, really amazing.
Should be really awesome. Got some cool things.
Well, Melanie knows more than I do. I got into the first part of the meeting, and then afterwards, they grabbed the ball and just kept on going past. So I just need to get it on social media so it's out there. One more, Ken? Do you have it? No?
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm great.
I thought the hook was coming out one more time.
I was thinking about it, but
yeah, no,
we'll just hang on to it for now.
Okay, he's gonna. Ooh. See, I thought, okay. At least I wasn't.
No,
might be crazy, but anyway. All right. Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. And I know what I was going to tell you. If
we stay long enough, Randy
we're going to get it. This past week, two people came up to me and said, I just got caught up on the podcast, and you'd mentioned sharing. They're like, I had shared, one of them was on LinkedIn, and one of them, I believe, was on Twitter. And I was like, maybe not just those two, didn't do all of it, but right now we are in the middle of one of our most listened to months ever in the history of the podcast. As of the 18th, we already had over 1,200 listens this month. And so whoever is sharing out there, thank you so much.
It's Melanie.
Is this the Melanie effect?
It's the Melanie effect. There it is.
There you go. Well,
we add Melanie and
away it goes.
Look.
That's what we've been missing.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
That's it.
Too kind.
She's now, cheeks are now red.
I'm blushing. I'm blushing.
So between Melanie's parents, my parents.
Yeah, I know, right?
My mom's been listening to
Hi,
recently.
Mom. Hi, Dad.
Randy's parents.
So anyway, great job. Thank you so much. It means the world. It gets us into a lot of places in a lot of countries that, otherwise we may not, no one would even know WholeLife Church is there. So we appreciate the sharing. So that's going to take care for this week, and part 2 this week upcoming. So don't miss that. And then back in for the rest of the month to finish off. I'm excited because each week it's been getting better. So hopefully the momentum continues. No pressure, Ken.
None felt.
All right. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening and have a great week.